There's something sacred about the word home. It's where the world fades away. Where you're supposed to be safe, unseen, untouched. But what happens when that illusion is shattered? What happens when evil walks through your front door without knocking, and doesn't leave quietly? This is the story of Amanda Blackburn, a pregnant young mother, asleep in her Indiana home, unaware that three masked men were watching. Waiting. Moving closer. What happened next would horrify a city, fracture a family, and leave a country asking how something so senseless, so brutal, could happen in a place meant to protect life, not destroy it. Welcome, this is Crime Uncovered, where every case has a story, and the truth is often stranger and darker than fiction. If you haven't subscribed yet, kindly do so to stay updated on the latest crimes we uncover. Amanda Grace Blackburn wasn't the kind of woman who needed attention to be noticed. She had a calm light about her, the kind that didn't demand the room but gently filled it. Born in the summer of 1986 in rural Michigan, Amanda came into the world wrapped in faith. Her father, a pastor, and her mother, a loving pillar in their community, raised her and her two siblings in a home built on scripture, service, and compassion. Kindness wasn't something Amanda learned, it was something she embodied. In 1995, the family moved to Elkhart, Indiana, a small town where neighbors knew each other by name and Sunday mornings meant crowded pews and potlucks. Amanda thrived. At school, she was a quiet achiever, respectful, diligent, and smart. At church, she became known for her gentle spirit and willingness to help with anything. Sunday school, food drives, youth outreach. If something needed doing, Amanda was there, no questions, no credit expected. She was the kind of girl who remembered birthdays, who prayed for her classmates by name, who smiled even when her own day wasn't going well. A friend once said that Amanda didn't just believe in goodness, she lived it, one small act at a time. In 2006, Amanda stepped out of her comfort zone and moved to Florida to attend Pensacola Christian College. It was a leap of faith, a long way from home, and her first major step into independence. But it was also where her life would change forever. That's where she met Davy Blackburn. He was bold, energetic, and driven. He made people laugh. He spoke about faith with fire. Amanda was drawn to his intensity, and he to her calm strength. They were opposites in personality but aligned in vision. Both wanted to serve God, reach people, and make their lives count for more than comfort. They started dating, and it didn't take long before it was clear. They weren't just compatible, they were called to build something together. In 2008, just 2 years after meeting, Amanda and Davy were married. Their wedding was simple, beautiful, full of joy and gospel music. Family and friends remember it as a celebration of not just love, but purpose. By 2011, they'd moved to Indianapolis. Young, ambitious, and ready to build a church from scratch. With little more than a vision and a handful of supporters, they launched Resonate Church in the northern part of the city. Amanda wasn't the one behind the pulpit, but she was the foundation behind everything. She handled logistics, outreach, women's groups, prayer events. She welcomed strangers, mentored young women, and prayed for struggling families behind closed doors. Quietly, she built the kind of church people wanted to come back to. Their home life reflected their ministry. They adopted a dog named Mel, a golden retriever who quickly became part of the family. In 2014, Amanda gave birth to their son Weston. Her joy multiplied tenfold. Even as a new mother, she stayed active. Amanda ran marathons with her siblings. She cooked family meals. She coordinated Sunday volunteers. Her Instagram showed smiles, baby milestones, scripture verses, and the occasional joke about life with a toddler. In 2015, the family's joy deepened again. Amanda was pregnant with their second child, a little girl they had already named Evie Grace. Friends described Amanda as glowing during that pregnancy. She was excited, hopeful, ready to welcome her daughter into a world she believed in, one she wanted to make better. But sometimes even the strongest faith doesn't shield us from the storm. Because no matter how loving your heart, how safe your neighborhood, how good your intentions, violence doesn't care. And on one cold November morning, Amanda's carefully built world, her church, her dreams, her unborn daughter, would be torn apart by men who didn't even know her name. It was a Wednesday. Amanda was 12 weeks pregnant and home with Weston. Davy, as usual, woke up early, sometime around 6 a.m. He left for the gym, part of his morning ritual, never imagining he was walking away from a nightmare. After finishing his workout, Davy returned home around 7:30 a.m., but instead of heading straight inside, he stayed in the driveway to take a phone call, a small act of courtesy, not wanting to disturb Amanda and the baby. But when he finally stepped through the front door, everything changed. Amanda was lying on the living room floor, unconscious, covered in blood. There was no time to process, no time to panic. Davy called 911, his voice shaking as he pleaded for help. "She's breathing," he told them, "but she's not responding. There's blood everywhere." Paramedics arrived within minutes. They found Davy outside, his hands stained in red. Amanda was rushed to the hospital, barely clinging to life. She had been shot 3 times. Once in the back, once in the arm, and once in the back of her head. She was still breathing. But barely. Davy rode with her. Sat beside her. Prayed. On November 11, 2015, Amanda was pronounced dead. She was 28 years old. Her unborn daughter died with her. A vibrant mother. A second child. Gone. The home that once held laughter and ministry had become a crime scene. And no one knew who was responsible. Not yet. Detectives quickly cordoned off the Blackburn home. From the moment they stepped inside, it was clear this wasn't just a tragic death. It was a targeted, violent invasion. Amanda had been found face down on the floor. Her clothing had been removed. Her underwear was nearby. There was a trail of blood, splatter patterns on the wall, and something worse, signs of a possible S*Zool assault. Near her body, police found bank cards, a pile of mail, and evidence that someone had rifled through her personal belongings. Several items were unaccounted for. A laptop was missing. A few credit cards were gone. On the kitchen counter, a pack of Swisher cigars, earbuds, and a roll of duct tape, none of which belonged to Amanda or Davy. Upstairs, their young son Weston had been left untouched, and their dog Mel had been locked away in a separate room. Alive. Barking. In Amanda's bedroom, her cell phone sat untouched. But it held one important clue. A missed call from Chase Bank at 7:53 a.m. The reason? Suspicious activity had been flagged on Amanda's debit card. To investigators, this wasn't just a murder. It was a robbery gone horribly wrong, but one with personal, brutal elements. Someone had come into that home, not through force but ease. Because the front door, as the Blackburns often left it, was unlocked. As detectives began their hunt for suspects, the public's attention turned somewhere else entirely, to Davy Blackburn. To some, his behavior seemed off. In interviews, his grief looked controlled, measured. People began analyzing every word, every pause, every expression. Why hadn't he called 911 the moment he saw Amanda? Why did he take a phone call in the driveway instead of going inside? Why did he launch a media campaign so quickly after her death? Online forums lit up with theories. Reddit threads. Facebook groups. YouTube videos. Amateur sleuths scoured his sermons, dissected his interviews, questioned his emotions. Was he too calm? Too strategic? Too prepared? The fact that he was a pastor only fueled the fire. In recent years, the world had seen far too many spiritual leaders fall from grace. Scandals, cover-ups, betrayals. People were skeptical of the clergy, and Davy became a lightning rod. He had alibis. He was at the gym, seen on camera, confirmed by others. But for some, that didn't matter. Grief, they argued, doesn't follow a script. But neither does guilt. Still, amid the online backlash, police never considered Davy a suspect. His timeline checked out. His behavior, while not traditionally tearful, wasn't incriminating. They looked elsewhere, and that's when the bigger picture emerged. Amanda hadn't been the only victim that morning. In the days following Amanda's murder, reports began to pour in. Other homes had been burglarized that same day, some earlier that morning, others in the days before. And one thing became clear. Amanda's home wasn't a random target. It was part of a spree. Police traced a string of break-ins across the same neighborhood. Quiet streets, middle-class homes, front doors left unlocked in a community built on trust. One woman reported that a masked man had entered her house while she was in the shower. He pointed a gun at her, forced her out, and ransacked the place. She was lucky to be alive. Another neighbor recalled hearing 2 sharp bangs around 6:30 a.m. the morning Amanda was shot, but dismissed them as construction noise. Then came the breakthrough. Surveillance footage from a nearby home showed a shadowy figure in black, hood drawn tight, pacing on the sidewalk with a phone to his ear. Minutes later, he climbed into a silver Chrysler Sebring and disappeared. That car had been stolen just hours earlier in another break-in. Inside the abandoned vehicle? A treasure trove of evidence. A pink men's shirt. A universal remote. A bag of oranges. Multiple bottles of wine. And a failed ATM receipt from Amanda's stolen debit card. Whoever had killed Amanda wasn't done. They had left her body behind, and moved on to rob another house. They were still out there, and they were getting bolder. But their biggest mistake? They left DNA behind. The pink shirt found inside the stolen Chrysler Sebring looked ordinary at first glance, but it was the linchpin. DNA swabs revealed something big. A match to 21-year-old Jalen Watson, a known offender who had recently been released on parole for burglary. Once they had Jalen's name, the pieces began to fall into place. Investigators checked his phone records and confirmed he had been in the area of Amanda's home, at the exact time of the murder. But Jalen hadn't acted alone. Further digging led police to Deano Gordon, another young man under parole supervision. Cell tower pings placed both Jalen and Deano at 3 separate burglary sites that same morning, including the ATM Amanda's card had been used at, unsuccessfully. But there was one more number repeatedly called in their phone logs that day. Larry Joe Taylor Jr., just 18 years old. The call history, surveillance footage, and witness reports painted a chilling picture. The 3 men had been together the night before, visiting their landlord. She confirmed they left around 3:30 a.m., taking with them her boyfriend's handgun and a shirt. Both items would match the evidence found at the crime scenes. The gun, the very one used to murder Amanda Blackburn, had also been linked to another killing in the weeks prior. Police now had their suspects. On November 21, 2015, 11 days after Amanda's murder, Larry Joe Taylor Jr. was arrested on suspicion of murder, robbery, and breaking and entering. Not long after, Jalen Watson and Deano Gordon were also taken into custody. What happened next is all too familiar in multi-suspect cases. They turned on each other. Deano broke first. In exchange for a lighter sentence, he gave a full statement. According to Deano, the plan had always been robbery. They had scoped out the neighborhood and were going to hit multiple homes before sunrise. The gun, Larry's idea, was for intimidation. But when they broke into Amanda's house, things spiraled. Larry entered Amanda's bedroom alone. She was asleep. Deano said it wasn't supposed to go that far. But when Amanda woke up and resisted, Larry snapped. He sexually assaulted her, then shot her. Once, then again. Then a final bullet to the back of the head. Deano and Jalen were in the stolen car when Larry called. "She's down," he said. "Come get me." Surveillance footage showed him walking casually down the street, getting into the car. No panic. No remorse. According to Deano, Larry was almost proud of what he'd done. After leaving Amanda's body behind, they went right on to rob another home, stealing jewelry, laptops, wine, even a bag of oranges. As if nothing had happened. As if they hadn't just taken a life. But now all 3 were in custody. And the weight of the charges was coming down fast. With Deano Gordon's cooperation and a trail of forensic evidence, from DNA to cell phone records and surveillance footage, prosecutors began building their case. At the center of it all was Larry Joe Taylor Jr., the youngest of the 3, just 18 at the time of Amanda's murder, but the one investigators believed had pulled the trigger and committed the most horrific acts. The list of charges against him was long and devastating. Felony murder, burglary, criminal confinement, auto theft, carrying a handgun without a license, robbery resulting in serious bodily injury, attempted use of a stolen debit card, and more. But as the prosecution prepared their case, a painful legal limitation surfaced. Indiana law at the time did not recognize the murder of an unborn child as a separate charge, unless the fetus was deemed viable outside the womb. Amanda had been 12 weeks pregnant. Her daughter, Evie Grace, had a name, a future, but not legal personhood. Prosecutors were barred from filing a second murder charge on behalf of Amanda's unborn baby. And when jurors accidentally learned of the pregnancy too early in trial proceedings, information they weren't supposed to consider, a mistrial was declared. It happened not once but twice. 2 painful delays. 2 resets. Amanda's family had to sit through it all, the evidence, the details, the waiting, only to be told justice would take even longer. Eventually, Larry Taylor waived his right to a jury trial and opted for a bench trial, allowing a judge to determine his fate. Perhaps he believed the emotion of Amanda's story would sway a jury. Perhaps he thought a judge might show leniency. He was wrong. In a quiet courtroom, the judge reviewed months of testimony, digital records, and witness statements. Larry never confessed. Never apologized. He sat stone-faced throughout. But the evidence spoke for him. He was found guilty on all charges. The sentence, 86 years in prison, effectively a life term. No parole. No second chance. For a crime he had laughed about. For a mother and daughter he had executed. For a family he had shattered. Meanwhile, his accomplices, Jalen Watson and Deano Gordon, struck plea deals with the prosecution. Jalen was sentenced to 29 years, later reduced to 15 with a minimum of 10 years to serve. Deano received 30 years with 25 years behind bars and 5 years of probation. Though their roles in Amanda's murder were secondary, they were still participants in the crimes, and the court made sure their sentences reflected that. None of the men ever issued a public apology. No remorse. No visible regret. Just a chilling silence. The kind that echoes louder than words. For Amanda's family, the convictions brought a form of closure. But peace? That's something else entirely. Because no sentence, no matter how long, can bring back what was taken from them. Not Amanda. Not Evie Grace. Not the life they were still building, one morning at a time. Amanda Blackburn's death left a vacuum, in her family, her community, and the hearts of everyone who followed her story. A promising life, a growing family, a future daughter, all stolen in a moment of violence. Her husband Davy was left to grieve publicly and painfully. He'd lost his wife, his unborn child, his partner in faith and life. And yet he forgave. Davy later revealed that as a pastor his greatest challenge wasn't coping with grief, it was confronting rage. Rage toward the men who had violated his home, assaulted his wife, taken his daughter, and left his son without a mother. But through his faith he said he found mercy. Even for the men who destroyed everything. It was a message not everyone was ready to hear. Because while Davy spoke of redemption, others still had questions. And those questions turned into controversy. Less than a year after Amanda's death, Davy remarried, to a woman named Christy, another devout Christian with her own journey of loss. Their relationship moved quickly. To many, too quickly. Online chatter reignited. Critics questioned how a man who had just buried his wife and unborn child could move forward so fast. Some accused him of using Amanda's death to gain attention. Others saw it as proof of resilience. But in truth, grief is never tidy. And healing doesn't come with a timeline. Davy defended his choices, acknowledging the pain but affirming his path. He wrote a book. He continued to preach. And in his own words he said Amanda had passed the baton to Christy, and together they were running the race of faith. Whether people understood it or not, it was how he coped. It was how he survived. Amanda Blackburn's story isn't just about violence. It's about vulnerability. It's about how fast life can be ripped away, even in the place we're supposed to feel safest. She was a mother. A wife, a believer. She lived a life centered on others, on faith, on service. And that's how she's remembered. By those who knew her, Amanda is described as selfless, gentle, brilliant in quiet ways. She didn't need a spotlight, she simply gave love without limit. Whether it was raising her son, serving her church, or welcoming people into her home, Amanda lived intentionally. And in that final act of trust, leaving her door unlocked in a community she believed in, she unknowingly let in the men who would take everything. Today, Davy still honors her memory. So does their son Weston, who has grown up without the mother who once carried him, nurtured him, protected him. Her church is gone. Her home no longer holds the same laughter. But her legacy, it remains. A life of kindness. A faith that carried her. A tragedy that reminds us, evil doesn't always wear a mask, but sometimes it walks in through an open door. Thank you for watching. Every victim deserves their story told. If you found this story shocking and heartbreaking, subscribe to Crime Uncovered and help keep their memory alive. What do you think about Amanda's murder? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, keep questioning everything.